Welcome to another episode of the Between Podcast. This is a special episode, kind of a short, quick episode. The episode is coming out on a day where the global Between community is trying to gather in kind of a weird way. We're trying to make the whole day feel like a sanctuary, like a spiritual home, like a whole day of inviting people to choose to practice sanctuary and connection and a feeling of releasing all the noise in their lives. And so this episode supposed to come out on that day. And Danny, you're here with me, Reverend Danny Hillier, as always, this season with me. I'm really curious, Danny. I want to explore the idea of having a spiritual home. What does it mean for somebody to have a spiritual home? I'm curious your first sort of knee-jerk response to that idea of a spiritual home.
hmm My first knee-jerk response is that's the very reason why people seek out a church or
Yeah.
seek out a faith community in general, because there's this longing and this we can put it this way, this homesickness for our soul to be expressed, to be seen, because we're
Mm.
seen as people in our own homes most of the time. In healthy homes we're seen, and there's also a depth to our souls that wants to be seen and expressed. And it's done in a multitude of ways. It's done in a variety of different religions and different worship practices, different denominations, different, you name it. There's so much to the diversity within religions that our souls find their own sanctuary and their home.
Yes, man, Danny, right out of the gate, you offer something that I hadn't really thought about. Like a spiritual home is a place where your soul feels seen, or
Mhm.
you really feel fully seen and fully known. That might be one of the indicators of a spiritual home, or one of the characteristics of a spiritual home. That's really important. And you also have me thinking about, like, man, there are in my life, there are a lot of places where I have, over the course of my life, felt at home.
Mhm.
Not necessarily spiritually. I just mean, like, over the course of my life, I've had many quote unquote homes. Um, and that seems natural. Of course, I've had a lot of homes, and many people, most people, throughout their life, they don't live their whole life in their childhood house where they were born and where they grew up. At least not anymore. I wonder about, can people have multiple spiritual homes, multiple
Mhm.
places where they can feel seen? You said, like, this can be a spiritually diverse experience, right? Like it people find a spiritual home in lots of places, not just, certainly not just a particular denomination of a particular Christian tradition or something like that, right? I'm curious about your understanding of having multiple spiritual homes. Is that a possibility?
Mhm. 100%. I think of, for instance, the church that I was raised in, the church that I go back to, and I get that, like visiting your childhood home, right? Like I'm like, oh, there's that little closet that I used to hide in when we were playing sardines throughout the whole church, or like all these memories just flood through me, and I have such fond memories of this church. And yet, there's also that feeling within me of like, and that was a different home for a different season of my life. Just as when I go visit my childhood home, I feel the same way. Like, oh, I'm not going to go, tuck myself into bed now there anymore. So I think there's multiple. So there's two responses I have to this question. One is we have multiple spiritual homes for the season of life that we're in, for the phase of faith that we are in, the stage of faith that we are in. And we can also have multiple places that our spirit does feel alive and seen. And that could be, whether it's visiting a hometown church, whether that's going to an interfaith ecumenical, like any type of service like that, where your soul's like, this is so fascinating, so interesting. And also, I remember traveling through Europe, and in Europe, you're usually as a tourist walking by foot, and there's always these unique churches, right? Like I think of specifically in Paris, Sacred Heart, right? Like you just walk in, you walk through, you light a candle, like, and there's a different peace that your soul feels of like, I've never been here before, yet I feel seen,
Mm.
my heart feels steady, I feel some peace. I'm lighting a candle, reminding my soul that it's at home in this place too. And then I continue on and go find myself a croissant or whatever. Like there's so many different
Yeah.
places that our home, that our soul feels connected to its spiritual home.
Yeah.
That all makes sense.
It absolutely does. I want to follow up, but I want to take a different angle, Danny. Like, um, it's one thing to talk about this conceptually, but it's another thing to talk about it kind of personally or directly, I guess. I love your anecdote about, sort of maybe there was a special church that you found yourself in while you're traveling one day and you're in Europe and you're lighting a candle and you're like, no, like I don't know anybody here. This is my first time in this building. But there is something about the elements that I'm experiencing that make this
Mm-hmm.
feel like home.
Mm-hmm.
Danny, it wasn't that long ago that you and your family moved houses, like actually moved houses, right?
Yeah.
And when you do that, you buy a house, but you make it a home, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious for you, what makes your home your home? What are if you think about your experience of being at home and feeling at home, and maybe even like in those first weeks of moving in and unpacking the boxes and getting settled, what are the elements of making a place a home?
Mm-hmm. It sounds so cliche, but it's the people that are in the home, right? So it's obviously my family. And then it's not just my family, but it's also making sure the spaces are intentionally set for what matters to our family, right? Like the dinner table, you think of the things you first unpack when you get into a new home, and it's, the dinner table, the silverware, the place where you're going to eat your meals together. It's maybe a couch for my husband, it'd be the TV so that it's football season, right? Like where you find your sacred, throughout the house that you can gather as a family, that makes it home. Because it also makes me think of like my parents have moved so many times since my sister and I moved out of their home. And yet, anytime I go to whatever is their house now, it's home because it's immediately like they're there, their dog is there, all the little trinkets or
Mm.
things that have followed them to each of their homes, the furniture, the smell, all of that is me, even as an adult woman, being
Yeah.
like, oh, this feels like home.
Yeah, that's actually really interesting. Like when you visit somebody else, like somebody somebody like a family member, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they feel comfortable there, you feel comfortable there. It not
Yeah.
always, but I think that that might be an element to draw upon. Obviously, for me, I'm interested in this conversation for a couple of reasons. This idea of how do we find our spiritual home, or how do we understand the idea of having a spiritual home? I'm interested in it for a couple of reasons related to between and this larger global ministry that we have and that we're building. Number one, I think there's a lot of people listening right now. There are a lot of people out there who are part of Between, who are between spiritual homes, who
Mm-hmm.
had a spiritual home and then it hurt them, or then they got disenchanted by it, or then they had to move and now they don't have
Mm-hmm.
that thing that they understood as a spiritual home, and they want to know how to find another one, or they want to feel the feeling of being spiritually home, but don't know how to get there. I think secondly, I believe, I really believe, we can create spiritual homes for people, even momentarily. I mean, this is the whole concept of the book that is coming out soon, right? This idea of building cathedrals of connection with people. even in a single conversation, even in a fleeting moment, even in a an hour at a coffee shop, or 2 minutes at the checkout counter, or
Mhm.
5 minutes in the break room at work, we can create cathedrals of connection. And the better way to, maybe I should have titled the book, spiritual homes,
Mm.
constructing spiritual homes, because I really believe we can somehow surround the space of our interactions with the elements of things that that make people's souls feel seen, and that allow people to be fully embraced and at rest and comfortable, and
Mm.
feeling beloved in that space. I
Mm.
think that's part of what we're called to do. We're partly called to create spiritual homes for each other. I'm curious your response to that.
Mm. Okay, there's two parts to that. In the first part, my response is people who you mentioned, people who are maybe in that transitional
Yeah.
period, or maybe people who have never even found a home for their soul in a faith community of some sort. And my first thought, which is kind of counter to, I know, a lot of the missions of the church to grow churches, grow memberships, is that it's so okay to explore new
Yeah.
homes. It's more than okay, even if you are a member at a church for decades, if it's no longer serving your soul in the way that it needs to be fed, that you feel alive in God and live in the one who creates you, then go explore, go see what's out there, right? Like, I think we get so confined to the walls of our own sanctuary that we forget that there's a million different ways to worship and experience the divine. And it's more than okay to change your mind at any time in your faith journey, in your spiritual journey, and anytime your soul feels a wrestling. Now, there's two types of wrestling, right? There's the wrestling for growth, but then there's also this wrestling of stagnation of, I'm not being fed the way that I need to be fed. And that's more than okay, right? There's a reason there's so many different expressions of religion and expressions of faith. So I think it's more than okay to experience different homes, and maybe there's multiple places. I know I serve two different congregations, and I talk to church members who say, well, sometimes I go here and sometimes I go here, and I also like this here. Like, yes, it's not all one size fits all, and it's not one church that does it best or one faith community that does it best. And I think what's most important to that is then how we interact with people, right? If our soul is properly being nourished in a faith community, then it should allow and empower and equip us to be better members of society, so that we do have those great interactions at the checkout, or at the coffee shop, or over lunch, or at family get-togethers and gatherings throughout the holiday season.
Yeah. DNA, I I think one of the biggest curses of modern American Christian church institutional tradition is this default setting of every church is trying to recruit you to be a member, and period, like to get you, and once we got
Mhm.
you, we got you. I think that's messed up, Danny, and I think for all the reasons that you just said, I am a big believer in having lots of spiritual homes. I think we are so, here's a way to think about it, listener. You are so spiritually rich. You are overflowing with spiritual wealth. You are a spiritually wealthy person, so much so that you can afford multiple spiritual homes. You've got a vacation home that you go to that is a spiritual home for you. You've got a second, a little place down the street that you go visit every once in a while. You've got a bunch of spiritual homes. I hope people believe themselves to be so spiritually wealthy that they are not confined to only their one little box
Mhm.
that they felt like they had to commit to. Don't hear me wrong. commit to a place, find a community. Community isn't a place where you go and get entertained and leave. Community is a place where you contribute, you co-create. We have a responsibility for co-creation, I believe. It is a place where you show up and help, and you show up and you're a part of it. But you are so spiritually wealthy, I believe we all are, that we can do that in a lot of places, or at least multiple places. And part of what I've even written about Between before as being an extra church. If it's so perfectly okay with me if Between is not your only spiritual community, I hope it's an extra church for a lot of people. I hope it's an extra faith experience that people can tag on to the back of whatever else they've got going on. Ideally, a local community of people who care about doing important work for the world and including caring for each other in meaningful ways. I really believe we're spiritually wealthy. I think we can afford a lot of different spiritual homes.
Mm-hmm. You touched on something that I often think about, especially within America. What I'm most familiar with in worship settings is the Christian church is often set up in a way of we know something and we need to evangelize and share it and save the people around us. When in reality, sometimes we need that reversal thinking of, man, there are amazing people out there. There are some amazing images of God in this world that are full of creativity, that are full of goodness, that are full of all kinds of things that we should learn how to share life better with them. Rather than looking at them as a problem to be solved, look at them as other co-creators, as other co-illustrators and publishers in this great story of life that we are all narrating alongside each other.
That's cool, Danny. What a way to bring home this message of home. A home is a co-created space. A home is a place where you've got chores, you've got responsibilities, but not just you, right? Like, it is a shared space. It is a space where to really be home requires, I believe, you to compromise and care and open yourself to others' needs and others' priorities, and work in the mess of that. Homes are messy. Homes are not easy to create or maintain. And so to be invited into a place, to find a place where you feel that, your soul is seen, but also that you can see other souls and you are willing to do the work of that, including the people there that are maybe not the most fun to hang out with. They may not be the perfect people, as it turns out. That's kind of hard to find. There's this really short little line from a sermon given by Thich Nhat Hanh, the Vietnamese Buddhist monk. I was listening to this the other day, and it's just really simple. He talks about, there's this old text that he had to memorize, but it started with these words: "I have arrived. I am home." And this becomes a breath prayer for Thich Nhat Hanh. I have arrived. I am home. And I think it's such a powerful mantra to borrow and to try out the next time you're maybe feeling a little anxious or harried, or the next time you sit down with somebody and you're about to have an interaction, a conversation, to maybe start with even an internal monologue that says, I have arrived. I am home. And Thich Nhat Hanh talks about how this is reminding us, I have arrived, reminds us that I have arrived in this moment, that nothing in the past or nothing in the future is real, but I've arrived here right now, and to recognize and acknowledge that I've arrived in this moment, and this moment matters. And in fact, this moment's all I have, and I am home. This space is a home, a spiritual home. I can share it with others. I can open the front door to others and invite them in to this spiritual home that I can create right now in this moment. I have arrived. I am home.
Mm.
I just think that is such a beautiful mantra that can maybe inform us as we try to create spiritual homes for others, even when we're engaging with others that are maybe not easy for us to engage with.
Mm. I love that mantra. And I think of it as when I go home, whether it's to my house, whether it's to my sister's house, whether it's to my in-laws' house, my parents' house, the first thing I do is, I kick my shoes off and I take the jacket off and I get comfy. I grab myself a drink out of the fridge. Like, what if we met people with this mantra of, I have arrived, I am home, let me be home, let me make people feel like they can take their shoes off in this conversation, let me make people feel like they can settle in and get comfortable with me as this presence of a home.
I love that, Danny. Hey, listeners, I hope you feel like you can take your shoes off when you're listening to us. You can grab a drink out of the fridge, make yourself at home, make yourself a sandwich if you'd like. Whatever makes you feel comfortable here at Between. I hope you feel that, and I hope you connect with somebody in your life this week or this season. I hope you connect with somebody that surprises you by making your soul feel at home with them. And maybe you can give that gift to others this season. Maybe you can turn around and open your front door, say, I've arrived, I am home in this moment. Open your front door and see the souls of the people around you and welcome them in, creating a spiritual home for them, creating a sanctuary for them, creating a cathedral of connection for them. Danny, thanks for hanging out with me for a little bit. This is a short one, but I love this question. I love the idea of a spiritual home. Danny, I feel spiritually at home with you.
Likewise.